everyone. My name is Amira and Armond. We have Jill Wright with us, and we're going to talk about a common misunderstanding with CMMC. So, Jill, what's the first one?
FIPS in general, but especially where you need FIPS, and when you don't need it.
Okay. So I was actually teaching a class last week, and this was a big topic because there's several requirements in CMMC that are FIPS-adjacent. There's a requirement to use cryptography to protect remote access sessions. There's a requirement to use cryptography for wireless. I think there might be one for just like transmission of passwords, things like that. There's like a total of 5 or 6 different requirements in CMMC Level 2 that have to do with encryption type things. And there's a really common misunderstanding that you have to use FIPS-validated modules for every single one of those scenarios. And I'd like to say that's incorrect. It's actually not that hard. You don't have to go that extreme. So,
yay!
Well, let's see if I can justify myself here. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to have a really silly paintbrush picture here. So the actual requirement for FIPS, if I can paraphrase, is to use FIPS-validated cryptography when it's actually FIPS-validated modules when using cryptography to protect the confidentiality of CUI. Okay, so what is that? Cryptography, CUI, confidentiality. Okay, we have to have all of these for you need FIPS 140-2 validated module. All 3 together. Okay, so a very common scenario, because we're in the land of clouds now, is we've got our cloud up here, and it's let's say it's Office 365. And you've got a laptop down here that's communicating to Office 365 using a web browser. Okay. Now, HTTPS, we don't know what that really means. That just means it's using some sort of secure session. But if you go look at the knowledge base articles for Office 365, the knowledge base articles say that all the web browser connections use TLS 1.2 and that it is FIPS. It's enforced on the Office 365 side. Okay, so right now we have met all that stuff if we're transmitting CUI across this wire. Okay, so
would that mean that's inherited?
Yes, actually, yes. Yep. So the fact that that Office 365 is FedRAMP moderate at the absolute minimum, and quite often FedRAMP high, which also requires FIPS, means that this session between the computer and Office 365, assuming that you're using the protocol that they say to use, is protected, right? So is it CUI? Yes. Does it need to be confidential? Yes. Are we using cryptography to protect it? Yes. Therefore, we need FIPS, and we got it. Okay. Now, let's try a different scenario. So we have a computer in a building, and right next to it is another computer. And these two computers are talking to each other. And there's literally just one network cable between the two of them. And they're inside of Fort Knox. Okay. Super secure. Let me see if I can even, oh, there we go. Okay.
Very nice. You got skills.
There's no doors. There's no windows. We have an armed guard patrolling. Okay. We do not need cryptography to protect the CUI. So even if there is CUI going between these two computers, because it is physically protected.
That could be a fence.
It could be. Somebody would be like, but they could find video cameras or, you know, spy satellites or something. But because we're physically protecting the CUI, we don't need cryptography to protect it. Therefore, we don't need FIPS. And fun little fact, this is actually how most military facilities protected their CUI 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They just had their networks inside of a super secure building, and all the stuff inside the network was unencrypted, not FIPS at all. And then if they needed to move the CUI outside the network, what they do is they would put a really strong firewall on the boundary. They'd put another firewall at the other building. Let's see if I can make the other building over here. And then they would make sure that between the two firewalls, there's a FIPS-validated site-to-site VPN. Right, so all of this CUI inside the buildings is unencrypted. It's unencrypted over here too. But when it goes through between the buildings, it's encrypted and protected with FIPS. And that's kind of the default assumption. That's one reason, fun fact, why the FIPS validation prioritizes firewalls. If you've been looking at the site, the cryptographic module validation program, NIST CMVP, a lot of the validated modules are actually firewalls. And that's because the de facto standard for the military is you do it using these firewalls between buildings. So let me just expand just a little bit more on this.
That
idea.
CUI in Fort Knox could also be your backup. That would not have to have FIPS on it because it had the physical security stuff.
Yep. So let's combine our Office 365 scenario, which we know the connection is nice and protected. But let's combine it with Wi-Fi. So you've got your, you've got your building with a wireless signal. And say you've got firewall over here. that the internet goes through. So firewall to internet, and then internet to cloud. So we've got this wireless network that's somehow helping your computer transmit to the internet, right? Now, the web browser has established a protected session to Office 365. Okay. This is FIPS validated. You can have CUI on it. One of the common misunderstandings is people think that you need to take this Wi-Fi network and make this Wi-Fi network FIPS validated. And you don't. Because this session here, the one that's actually transmitting CUI, is already FIPS validated. It's already encrypted. So it doesn't matter what the Wi-Fi network is.
It's already encrypted.
It's already encrypted. We all need to encrypt it twice. So while there is a requirement that the wireless is encrypted, it doesn't need to be FIPS unless you're passing CUI across the wireless in an unencrypted form. Right? Or you're passing across the wireless in a form that's not FIPS module encrypted, to be a little bit more precise. What do you think, Jill? Are there any holes?
That's good.
No? Okay. All right. It makes sense to you, at least.
Makes sense to me.
All right.